Hey everyone, I'm Jacob Castro, and welcome to another video on Jacob's Aquarium. So, I made the first episode of Q&A, and that got a huge response. Thank you guys, by the way, for all your very lovely comments and messages. I really appreciate it. I thought it was overwhelming, before. Now that I've, I guess, given the questions and answers thing some publicity, it's gotten even more overwhelming. That's not a bad thing. Thank you guys, so much. I really appreciate it. And it really, kind of helps me understand what people are struggling most with, because you can kind of tell a pattern, with questions, people asking kind of similar, things. So I know what to focus on more on my channel to help more people. So it really does help me. Thank you guys so much. So let's get into the second episode of questions and answers. This comes from Vince Rocks on my Facebook account. Well, first of all, he sent me a video and he says that's how one of my fish was behaving after a water change. Maybe it's making a home or something, and also thinks a lot. Okay. So anyways, his fish in the video is kind of hiding, kind of moving the substrate around. I believe it's a cichlid. It looks actually like a Jack Dempsey. And I guess he thinks the fish is acting a little strange, after a water change. In reality, you kind of have to expect your fish to be a little uneasy after a water change, basically because, in the wild, fish really don't have to deal with people doing water changes. Let's just be honest about that. So when you put fish in an aquarium and you're doing a water change, you have your hands in their environment. First of all, they're afraid of you. They don't know what you're going to do. You're moving things around, siphoning out water, doing all of these things. It's just a kind of a big disruption, to their normal everyday routine, So you're kind of in their space. And sometimes with some fish, that can make them a little uneasy. It can make them a little afraid. So they tend to hide, as your fish was doing in the video. So you just have to know that your fish are going to be a little afraid afterwards, just because of all the stuff going on during the water change, but they should perk right back up after about an hour or so, maybe a little longer, but they're perfectly fine. It's not hurting them in any way, as long as you're doing the water change right, of course. But they should be perfectly fine. My fish do the same thing. Some of them hide. My swordtails in particular, they'll hide behind the plants while I'm doing a water change, and they won't come out for, a matter of hours. So and also in regards to the fish moving the substrate around, cichlids naturally actually just do that. That's part of them. I'm not a cichlid expert. I'm kind of more of an expert with planet tanks, so I can't really say why cichlids do that. I've heard that it's because they build kind of like a home, as you said in your question. They kind of move the rocks around or sand so that they create this little kind of like indentation in the substrate, and that's where they claim their space, But then again, don't take my word for it. I'm not a cichlid expert. You should actually consult a cichlid expert on that. But that's just what I've heard. So your fish are perfectly fine. Nothing to worry about, in other words. This next question comes from David Walker on Facebook. He says, "Hi, I'm having a big problem with one of my plants. Actually, most of them. I have fluorescent lighting and direct sunlight when it comes in the window. All my plants keep dying, browning, and falling apart. What can I do to fix this? I love planet tanks and hate the look of the fake plants." Okay, fluorescent lighting. I'm not sure if that's of the appropriate Kelvin rating that plants usually like, which is around 6,700 K. But that could be an issue. Your lighting could be not enough, so the plants are basically just decaying away because there's no sufficient light, for them to photosynthesize and grow. And you also said that you get direct sunlight from a window that points at your tank, and that always is not a good thing. First of all, direct sunlight, pointing at an aquarium can cause major algae problems to begin with, so you should always avoid that. That's pretty much why people that have made videos, showing how to set up a fish tank, they always recommend that you set up a tank away from an open window or away from direct sunlight. My fish tank, however, is right next to my window, but the thing is that it doesn't receive direct sunlight because the sun never gets to an angle where it's directly pointed at it. So I got lucky there actually. But that's one really big tip that you should consider is, never ever place an aquarium in front of a window or in direct sunlight, because you're just asking for problems. So your plants keep dying and turning brown and falling apart. Okay, so pretty much when plants start to do this, because over the years that I've had tanks, especially when I first started out, a number of my plants did this. It was just because they're not getting enough nutrients, they're not getting enough light, they're not getting enough to grow, in other words. So they basically are just decaying away. They're going to become part of the substrate. So one thing that I would recommend that you do is to check your lighting. Make sure it's of the appropriate Kelvin rating that plants usually like, which I said is around 6700 K. Plants need good lighting to photosynthesize and grow. That's the only way that they will pretty much grow in a planted tank. That's why I say lighting is pretty much the most important thing. I think that's kind of second to substrate, which that's another thing too. Make sure that you're using good planted tank substrate. Don't use just regular gravel, because that contains no nutrients whatsoever. And if you are using planted tank substrate, look into buying maybe some root tabs or some things that you can put into the substrate to, kind of give it an extra kick as far as nutrients and vitamins. Also consider dosing some liquid fertilizers. That can also help. But the biggest and most important thing is to check your lighting, make sure your tank is being appropriately lit, and make sure it's the appropriate Kelvin rating. This next question comes from Henry Lee on Facebook. He says, "Hey," with an exclamation point, "Hey." I was wondering if you can answer this question of why my aquarium has yellow water. It's established, and I'm guessing it's from my ADA Aqua soil. I just got my lighting with 7000K 88 LEDs, and I believe it's 88 watts for 10 gallons or so, which means 8.8 watts per gallon. Oh, that's a lot. Also wondering how long the yellow in my water is going to last, plus I have Malaysian driftwood. Okay, well, now that you say Malaysian driftwood, I can pretty much tell why your water is yellow. Usually when you buy driftwood, you always want to make sure it's pre-soaked, and even still this might not, help this issue, but it's always a good thing. The reason why water turns yellow when you have driftwood in it is because the wood releases tannins. Tannins are just basically particles from the wood that are coming out because it's being submerged into water. So they're just, leaking out of the driftwood. Now, this can be very, very difficult to get rid of, and it may involve many, many water changes. And sometimes even after that, the problem still won't be fixed. But, in general, people that have driftwood in a planted tank, they always make sure it's pre-soaked before they buy it, meaning it was either boiled, for an amount of time. Usually, I think a good rule of thumb for driftwood is to boil it for 4 hours in really hot water, obviously boiling hot water, to release all the tannins. And, just stay away from wood that hasn't been pre-soaked, because wood that is pre-soaked will probably release far less tannins than the wood that hasn't been pre-soaked, and you won't have to do as many water changes to get rid of it. Since the wood is releasing those tannins in the form of particles in your water, you might also be able to get rid of them with some activated carbon, if you have a media reactor. If not, you can just stick a bag of it in your filter. You may also be able to get rid of it with a really, really fine filter pad, if your filter supports that, of course. Or if you have a wet dry filter, which makes it even better, which I don't recommend with a planted tank because it kind of does deplete CO2 levels a lot. You can try using a micron sock. 100 micron sock would work very well, polishing your water and getting all those tannins out. But in general, just know that, before you buy driftwood, make sure it is pre-soaked, and to try to get rid of it, water changes, water changes, water changes. That's pretty much all you got to do until the wood is done releasing tannins and there's no more that can go in your water. Of course, don't do water changes more often than you usually do, because you're just going to ask for problems after that. So just do your normal scheduled maintenance as far as water changes. Don't up the ante and do 50 gallons a week or anything. Just do your normal maintenance, and in time the water will start to become clearer and clearer and clearer. Don't go the UV sterilizer route. That's not going to fix anything. UV sterilizer is not really for thick suspended particles. It's mainly for, bacteria spores, algae spores, things like that. So pretty much that's why your water is yellow. It's because you're Malaysian driftwood. So before you buy driftwood in the future, try to make sure that you buy driftwood that's pre-soaked. All right, this next question comes from Facebook as well. Lots and lots of Facebook questions today. This comes from Brandon Webb, and he says, what is your favorite part of having an aquarium? Now, this is pretty much hard to answer because there are so many things I like about having an aquarium, and there's kind of a lot of things that I don't. But in general, I do really enjoy having a tank, and one of the things that I really enjoy the most is just taking care of my plants. I mean, watching them grow, seeing how well they fill up the tank and things like that, and then trimming them. I love trimming plants. That's one of my most favorite things to do. Fertilizing the tank with liquid fertilizer, just anything that involves the plants in general. I just love it. I love planting a tank, especially. That's really, really fun. Just any type of plant care, because the plants are the main focus of the aquarium, and the better you can manage them or trim them or, conform them to, how you want them to look or to create a look in your tank, the better. And I just think that that's one of the funnest things about owning a planted tank, and personally one of my favorite things about owning an aquarium. Next question comes from Cam Doc Rill. He says, what is your favorite fish? My favorite fish is the Asian arowana for sure. Unfortunately, they are illegal to own in the United States. They aren't in Canada though, so Canadians can own them, which is pretty disappointing since we're like right here, we're like the neighboring country. Why can't we own them too? But whatever. People have said that they're illegal because of people taking them out of their natural habitat and trying to sell them on the pet market and things like that. But there are many, 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 many Asian arowana farms in Indonesia, Thailand, Bangkok, all kinds of different countries, and they're all breeding these fish very, very rapidly. So their population has gone up tremendously, and I think through some type of controlled, buying and selling and things like that, you could really put them back into the hobby, But yeah, that's one of my favorite fish, the Asian arowana, and I'm extremely disappointed they are illegal to own in the United States. But hopefully, in the future, something will change, and we Americans will be able to own them again. All right, and this last question comes from Alex Holgate. He says, "Hey, Jacob's Aquarium, love your videos and especially your tanks. You actually made me take a leap to planted tanks instead of a marine tank. I was wondering, can I run by my setup with you and see if you would alter anything?" Okay. 78-gallon tank. It's a Joule Rio 300. 4 T5 54-watt tubes, and those are also made by Joule. Make sure those tubes are 6700K, around there, the best for planted tanks. You have a CO2 cylinder, and you're injecting 1 bubbles per second. Okay, that'll depend on what kind of plant you have. Dosing liquid fertilizers every day. You don't want to do that. The thing with liquid fertilizers is it's really easy to cause an algae bloom, and I don't recommend dosing liquid fertilizers every day. You're just asking for trouble. I even think that on the bottles of some of the liquid fertilizer I use, they recommend once a week or once every 2 weeks. So every day, yeah, I mean, while it may seem like too much of a good thing is good for a planted tank, it's not. Trust me, it's not. So stop dosing liquid fertilizers every day. You don't need to do that, especially since you're injecting CO2. The CO2 is actually enough already, but cut back your dosing schedule to once a week or once every 2 weeks, because if you continue on this pattern, dosing liquid fertilizers every single day, you'll start to notice algae, developing, and it'll be really hard to get rid of. And that's the main cause of algae blooms in planted tanks, is just way too much nutrients, and that's what's in liquid fertilizer. So cut back your dosing schedule to once a week or once every 2 weeks. You say that you're doing 1 bubble per second as far as as far as CO2, and you're growing Limnophilia, Cessiflora, Dwarf Sagittaria, Grass Anubis, and Loguidia. Okay, well, for those plants, it would probably be fine because they're not really too dependent on CO2. So especially the Loguidia, that stuff will grow anywhere. So 1 bubbles per second is sufficient. But remember what I said about the liquid fertilizer. I have filamentous algae grow. Oh, you do have algae already growing. Well, I could have told you that. I have filamentous algae growing out, and my leaves turn brown. What am I doing wrong? Also, would you add any different plants to this? Okay, so you are already getting algae growth, and that's pretty much because of what I just said. You're dosing liquid fertilizers every day. That's what you're doing wrong. So, very important, cut back on your dosing schedule. Once a week, once every 2 weeks. And actually, you know what? Since you are having algae problems, I would just stop dosing entirely for a while and just rely on your CO2 for fertilization in your planted tank, because it seems like there's already an abundance of nutrients in your tank, and adding more at this point, since you already have algae, will probably just make it worse. So I would just stop dosing entirely and just leave or let the CO2 do its job. And as far as any other plants that I'd recommend, I would probably recommend you get more Liquidia, just because it is cheaper. And I would recommend getting a lot of it or propagating the ones that you have now, because a higher plant load can take care of that extra nutrients and help you get rid of your algae problem. So get some more Liquidia. Just fill the tank up with that, or the Dwarf Sagittaria grass would actually be nice too. Get some more of that. But just try to actually, no matter what, just try to, make sure your tank is pretty stocked with plants, and you should be able to get rid of your algae problem much faster. But don't dose it all, because since you already have algae, just dosing is going to make it worse. So good luck to you. And lastly, before I go, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you that placed orders on my website for plants. It really means a lot to me, and I just can't believe how quickly everything is picking up. I mean, I have probably 40-50 orders to ship out on next week. It's crazy, guys. But you know what? I love it. I love doing it. I love talking to all my amazing customers, and it's just so much fun. You guys are really allowing me to live my dream. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. It really means a lot to me. Have fun with your tanks, everybody. And don't forget to check out my website, jacobsaquarium.com, where I sell aquatic plants. And stay tuned, because the store tour of Jan's Tropical Fish in Montclair, California will be filmed this Sunday, and I'll be uploading it the next day. So stay tuned for that. I know you guys are really going to love it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.